Hello, my name is Greg, and welcome to my channel. And today, first, let me tell you, I'm offering the 25% off Thunder Astrology readings for the month of December. So anybody interested in getting a reading, I'll put the link on the bottom, and I'd love to help you out with that. So first, wanted to talk about, well, not first, but I did want to talk about. Today is Saturn, and it being the seventh planet associated with the seventh day of the week, which is Saturday. And you can tell like Saturn, Saturday, they already have that connection. Same two syllables pretty much. And so this comes from the Roman god Saturn. And this was a god of agriculture, liberation, of time back then. They used to see him as that way. And I know this in the Norse mythology, how I've been talking about the other planets in the days of the week, how they have associations with the Norse gods in their names. This one doesn't have one. So people speculate that that's because they didn't come up with these names of the weeks until after the contact with the Romans. And they just associated with the god Saturn in the Roman tradition. And it's also associated with that Greek god Kronos. You've seen pictures of Kronos. He's like he's eating his children, just taking a big old chunk out of a little baby. And this has to do with a lot of the negative effects of Saturn, which is like or it has to do with the passing of generations too. But it has to do with the passing of time. Like all things come to an end, all things shall come to pass. You can't have life without death. As far as like the singer for the Doors, Jim Morrison would say, no one here gets out alive. That brings me up to the that whole thing about musicians. A lot of musicians at the age of 27, they end up dying. And we can associate that with Saturn, as far as around the age of 27 is when Saturn starts to come around to the exact place it was when you were born. It's not exactly there yet. It's estimated that it's usually around 29 and a half years where it really gets to that exact position it was at the time of your birth. But you start feeling the effects of it around that age of 27. There's a pretty interesting show or documentary on Netflix. I think it's called The 27 Club, and it talks about these different musicians that died at the age of 27: Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, Kurt Cobain, and what is that chick? That girl. That Rehab song. Fuck, I forget her name. But yeah, it talks about them, how they died at the age of 27, and Brian Jones too from the Rolling Stones. All of their problems and how they died and all that kind of stuff. But it's interesting that happens a lot. This has to do with the effects of Saturn being felt in people, where it's Saturn is the representation of law. It's about your karma. It's about your responsibility. So this is a time when people are starting to feel the effects of Saturn in terms of it's time to take responsibility for your life. Own up to what you've done. Whatever actions you've done in life have led you to where you are now. And it's time to be responsible. It's time to emotionally mature, grow up. And a lot of people don't want to face that. A lot of people escape with drugs, excess drugs, partying, whatever it is. This a lot of times leads to a lot of destruction, where they just, instead of feeling those effects, they'd rather just exit, which pretty much guarantees you're going to come back here. And those vibrations that you ran away from, they're pretty much going to probably be even more intensified in this next life, based upon your request for them to be more intensified. When you don't have a body and you're a soul, this is what when you feel that freedom, and you want to learn those lessons, this is what you program yourself to come into when in your next life. You want to feel these effects even more, so you can bring the true soul of yourself into the human experience, into the physical reality, and you could feel that double up, that freedom of the soul along with the freedom of being in a physical body, which has got to be a good feeling. But yeah, so it's associated with death, and then we look at Jupiter's associated with life, creation, water, fluidity, where Saturn is associated with death, destruction, dryness, decay. It's a reminder of the balance of Jupiter and Saturn, negative and positive. You can't have one without the other. Where Jupiter is the optimist, Saturn is the pessimist. But we look at the positive effects of Saturn, has to do with a lot of discipline, stability, order, detachment, responsibility, liberation. That it's the fact that it's the farthest planet out in the solar system represents this liberation. It's the farthest one in the Vedic astrology. We got the order of the planets, like the sun is your center. The sun represents your soul. And then we got Mercury is closest to the sun. Mercury is associated with the intellect. Being able to break things down and figure things out, pick things apart, and understand your place in this incarnation on Earth. Understand how things operate on this world. And then from there we got Venus is the next planet, farthest from the sun, after Mercury. And this has to do with a balance, getting along with people, recognizing that there are other people in this life you incarnated in that are going through the same thing that you're going to. And you want to share in this experience. Next from Venus, we got the planet Earth, and that's where we physically are. This is where our soul is shining the most through our physical body. We've incarnated here to bring that energy of the sun, our soul, onto the physical manifestation. And we got her circling around the Earth. We got the moon who's circling around the Earth really fast, and this represents our mind, our emotions. So how everything is just going through our minds and are all the time really fast. That's what the moon is. Then from there we got Mars, which is our energy, which is our fuel, that gives us that stamina to really get going in our life, get things done. From Mars we got Jupiter, and Jupiter is the point of expansion. This is the spiritual highest point of our consciousness. It has to do with seeing things from a very wisdom perspective, however you say that, wisdomic perspective. So it has to do with that expansion, just pure spiritual expansion, wisdom, knowledge. And from there we got the last planet, we got Saturn. Saturn is that slowest moving planet in Vedic astrology. It's got patience, which represents patience, and it represents the law of karma. It represents liberation. So this is that last planet, the energies of that last planet in our solar system. And this is what it has to do with, is learning all the lessons of this manifested physical experience and all the planets that are vibrating through our soul. Learning all these lessons, and once we do, we become free. Metaphorically, it's like we're free from this solar system. We're free to journey out through the rest of the universe or the multiverse. Wherever we go after this incarnation, after these many lives of human experiences. That's what that represents. I know one time in my meditations I was looking at Saturn as being a reflection of myself, that sphere, and then those rings around it, where all of those fears and bad habits that are surrounding me, that are kind of keeping me pinned down. And what I need to do is to look at all of those rings and understand them and work through all of those bad habits and all of those fears and self-sabotaging things that I'm doing. And by doing that, each one of those rings are going to start being snipped away. Pretty soon I'm going to snip them all in whatever life it's going to be. And then I'm going to be free. Boom. Being able to exit out of the solar system. Yeah, in a metaphoric way, or maybe in a real way, you know what I mean? Maybe we incarnate on another planet somewhere else, experience something else somewhere else. In the Thunder Wizard tradition, the Saturn sits in the west. This is the home of the terrestrial gods. The element of air is in the west, and the air is the contracting energy, which is what Saturn represents. Jupiter is expansion, Saturn is contraction. After you breathe out, your lungs are contracting, and you're creating that air. And that's why Saturn is placed in the west, in the Thunder Wizard, in the Thunder Wheel. And that element of bringing in that air element has to do with the middle fingers, touching the middle fingers, keeping the other fingers down, and then touching the thumbs, and then putting this by your navel, and chanting out loud or silently the sound. It kind of sounds like when you're inflating tires with air. You know, when that wind is blowing into the tire, that's the sound it makes. That you hear that sound. So this is a way to bring in that air element, that contracting element, into the body. But yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about, is Saturn's influence on us, and its liberating influences on us. You know, it's a planet that has so much patience; it'll wait for you in all lifetimes, however long it takes. But once you learn those lessons, it sets you free. You know, it doesn't have an eternal grip on you. It's gonna, all right, now you know, you're free. So that's all I wanted to talk about today. So anybody wants those Thunder Astrology readings for December, 25% off. Love to help you guys out. All right, that's all I got to say. Peace.